welcome to our BSMD and Pre-Med webinar. My name is Anish Devadi. I am a fourth year UNR BSMD student and an incoming UNR Med student. I'm also an academic and marketing consultant for Excel Academy. We also have Saad Chowdhury joining us today.
Hey.
And then Hannah Schultz.
Hey, everyone.
And Keetna Smith.
Hey, guys.
And then Keetna is also an incoming UNR Med student, and then Hannah's a third year college student, and Saad is a second year. So what is BSMD? BSMD are pipelines that confer conditional acceptance into medical school for high school students. So basically, when you're in high school, your senior year of high school, not only do you get acceptance into undergrad, but you also get conditional acceptance into medical school. These programs can be BSMD, BAMD, or BSDO. So what that means is you can either get a bachelor's of science in undergrad, a bachelor's of arts, and then as for medical school, you can get an MD or a DO. It allows students to earn a bachelor's of science or arts, followed immediately by a doctor of medicine or doctor of osteopathic medicine. What makes BSMD a little different from the traditional pre-med route is that in the traditional pre-med route, you'll find that students often take gap years. So that'll be at least 1 to 2 years where there's a gap in between their undergraduate and medical school studies. With BSMD, it's an immediate succession from bachelor's to medical school. Now, these programs vary in length. They can be 6 to 8 years. That's the undergraduate portion that changes in length, though. Medical school across the country is 4 years. Trying to do medical school in less than 4 years would be quite ridiculous. So it's the undergraduate portion that is either 2 to 4 years, and then the medical school portion is your standard 4 years. The acceptance rate for these programs, it's very, very competitive. Think Ivy League level, 1 to 4%. All right. So with that, there are about 42 programs total across the United States. 20%, so 1 in 5 programs give preference to in-state graduates. The following slides list all of the BA BSMD programs in the country, outlining the program's durations and cost of tuition. And important factors to consider when you're applying are cost, location, applicant residence preference, and program size. So these are just some of the programs that are offered across the country. There's some bigger name schools like Brown University, that's an Ivy League. Boston University is a great school. So is Baylor, Case Western. You have Hofstra, Northwestern, just a wide array of schools ranging in programs and tuition. So all important factors to consider. Just some more on this slide. A key note about UNR School of Medicine, currently they're undergoing a review of their BSMD program to try to make it a little bit better. So at the moment, they're not accepting applications, but the other 41 programs in the country are viable options. Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, they seem to have a pretty good link with Vegas students. They seem to know that Vegas kids know what they're doing, and they usually accept about 1 to 2 kids from Vegas every year. So that's a good program to consider for us. Oh, and then Washington University in St. Louis. It's also known as WUSL. It's a very popular school. All right, so all of these schools that I just mentioned, their requirements are going to be different to get in. So they vary greatly from program to program. Generally, though, you're going to want to start building your resume from as early as 9th or 10th grade. I remember I started volunteering at my local hospital from as early as the summer before 9th grade. As for your GPA, you should aim for at least a 3.7, so an A- GPA. And successful applicants are typically in the top 5% of your graduating class. It doesn't mean you have to be valedictorian. It just means that you have to show academic success in rigorous classes. Hold on, someone in the waiting room. As for your SAT and ACT, you should aim for the 95th percentile, especially in your math and science portions. You should also look to get exposure in the medical field. I understand that's very, very difficult being in high school, but try to look for shadowing, volunteering, and clinical research. We can answer more questions about that if you guys have them. As for your essays, you're going to kind of talk about your connection to medicine, your personal hardships. So for that, I'd recommend as you're going through high school and memorable, notable things happen, jot them down so you don't forget. I used to keep a notes like on my phone just of like different things that happened so that when it came time to write essays, I just had different options to pull from and then figure out where I wanted to go from there. As for your letters of recommendations, you should try to get one from a healthcare coordinator, an academic coordinator, and a non-academic coordinator. So think like hospital volunteering director, your teacher, and then maybe like a coach or something like that. Extracurriculars, you should try to be as like well-rounded as possible. Do some sports, music, clubs and activities, and leadership. And when you guys meet the panelists a little bit later, you'll see that there's not just one right way to get into BSMD. And then once you're in BSMD, there's not one cookie cutter thing to do. As long as you're showing passion for what you do and you're working hard, I would say that is the biggest requirement. There's also an interview portion, but there's another slide dedicated to that, which is right now. So the MMI tips. So MMI is a specific type of interview that some BSMD programs offer. It stands for multiple mini interview. And basically there's 10 stations with various problems and ethical situations. You get a minute to familiarize yourself with the situation and figure out what you want to say. And then you go inside and you have about 7 to 10 minutes to actually answer the question. With these questions, it's important to approach the situation with an open mind. Explore all perspectives, but be firm in voicing your opinions too. You want to tie your answers back to your own healthcare experiences. And that's why it's important to have those experiences, not just for your resume, but to develop yourself as an individual. And lastly, be personable, be yourself. If you're quirky and dorky, let that show. If you're a little more confident and tough, let that show. Whoever you are, just be you. Here's an example question. You catch your friend who is on the verge of getting kicked out of BSMD for his poor academic performance cheating. What do you do? So in this situation, it's important to realize that there's many factors that may cause someone to cheat. So it's important to have a little sympathy for your friend, but at the same time, make the right decision and knowing that cheating is not okay, even if the circumstances are dire, and therefore make a firm decision as to what you want to do, whether that's have your friend turn himself in, or if that doesn't work, taking it a next step further. So there's no one right or wrong answer. It's more about how you formulate and look at all the perspectives surrounding a situation and being firm with your final conclusion. All right, so this slide's about the life of a pre-med who gets into medical school. And this applies for both BSMD students and traditional pre-med students. You're gonna wanna be in a competitive science major, neuroscience, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, micro, immuno. You don't necessarily have to do a competitive science major, but it's pretty common. You may opt to double or triple major. You may opt to minor in science and non-science fields of study. Either way, you want to have a competitive GPA, especially your science GPA. You want a competitive MCAT score, and that's the exam you take before matriculating into medical school. A traditional pre-med will have ample clinical volunteering, shadowing, and research. They'll be involved in medical and non-medical clubs and activities. They might study abroad, barring a global pandemic, and then they might also do international medical missions. You can also scribe. There's other medical related internships. And then lastly, networking. There's medical fraternities. You can also outreach to current medical professionals. You can also network through social sororities and fraternities. It's all about like getting your name out there and just making new connections at that point. And that's the life of a pre-med. It's pretty hectic, but you take it day by day and it's manageable. All right. And that was a very, very brief overview of BSMD and pre-med programs. I wanted to make that quick because honestly, you can find most of that information online. I just wanted to make sure everyone was kind of on a similar foundation. The focus of today's webinar, really, I want you guys to meet the panelists. I want you guys to get your questions answered, and that way we can tailor this for you. So let's get started with that. I'm the first panelist. I'm a neuroscience major and I'm minoring in business. For my BSMD application, I coordinated an anti-bullying campaign for the Clark County, Las Vegas. I was a part of Key Club International, volunteered at St. Rose. I was a student ambassador for my high school. I was part of the SMWA Youth Advisory Council, volunteered at a comfort care hospice, did ride-alongs with AMR ambulance, and then I was a physician shadower at UMC. As for my current and future endeavors, I work as an academic and marketing consultant for Excel Academy. I'm a peer mentor for the Honors College. I shadow with healthcare partners. I work for Shopping Angels, which is a delivery service founded as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We deliver food and groceries to the immunocompromised and vulnerable populations. I'm a volunteer at Renown, a member of Phi Delta Epsilon Medical Fraternity, and a mentor for Science Fit. As for my future endeavors, I start medical school in the fall, and I'm very, very excited. Some of the other panelists know what specialties they want to do right away. I have no idea. I just want to go into med school with an open mind and just see where it takes me. All right, our next panelist is Saad. Go ahead, Saad.
Hi. I'm a second year college student here at UNR. I'm majoring in biology. So my BSND application, I talked a lot about a lot of the clubs I did. For me in high school, I really enjoyed like the after school, just doing some sort of club every day, kind of kept every day different and interesting. So some of these clubs that I really enjoyed were Future Medical Professionals, Varsity Quiz, Science Bowl. Aviation Club was like a fun club I actually made myself. We just like made and flew RC planes. National Honor Society, Leo Club, and Mouth Data. So all these different clubs gave good exposure to a lot of the different like aspects that help make you a good candidate as well for BSND. Like you have your volunteering from like NHS and Leo Club and Mouth Data. You have like some sort of like science, STEM factors from like the Science Bowl and Future Medical Professionals. And then you kind of get like a team aspect when you work on a team with the Varsity Quiz and Science Bowl. And also important in your BSND application is some sort of some experience in clinic or something like that. So I shadowed my own pediatrician. I was like, hey, can I shadow you? So that's one thing you can try. Just ask your own pediatrician. You probably know them at least semi well. And then also I broke many of my fingers. So I knew an orthopedic pretty well because I broke a lot of fingers, mainly from basketball. And then another way to get exposure was volunteering in St. Rose Hospital. It's pretty fun and chill way to rack up some volunteering hours and meet some cool people. And then I worked in a UNLV research lab. It was Dr. Jefferson Kinney's Alzheimer's research lab. So it was really fun. I really enjoy research, which is actually what now that I'm here at UNR, I joined Dr. Renan's neurophysiology lab. Research is always so with research, you have like bench research, and there's also like I think it's called like dry lab, wet lab. So I enjoy that wet lab where you're actually running experiments. A lot of my research works with mice and bacteria and stuff like that. So I think that's really cool. And I'm also a genetics discussion leader. So that's just, helping kids learn genetics here at UNR. And then volunteering and shadowing is just something you gotta keep on your radar throughout your career. And then future goals, I spent too much time in the lab and I haven't found any cool clubs to join last year. I was like, yeah, I should find some cool clubs to join. But I spent way too much time in lab and I haven't found the time to do that yet. But it's still a goal of mine.
Thank you so much, Saad. Are you volunteering and shadowing anywhere specifically, or is that more of a future endeavor?
Yeah, it's something that's still on my radar. I'm hoping this summer I'll figure something out.
Yeah, it's okay. Saad's still a little young. He's got some time. So, but I like having Saad here because he's a little closer to you guys, like in terms of the whole high school to applying to BSMD. So he's the most recent with the application. So if you have any questions about that, I think he'd be a good resource, as well as the UNLV Research Lab. That's amazing. All right. Hannah.
Hi, everybody. My name's Hannah, and I'm a third year BSND student at UNR. So I'm majoring in microbiology and immunology with a minor in community health sciences. So looking a little bit at what my BSND application looks like coming out of high school, just like Saad, I was also in National Honor Society, and I was the captain of our cheer team. So like something that I think is fun in high school is just do things that you enjoy. Like I had a dance background growing up, so I wanted to try something new, but that was still able to give me like a leadership opportunity while still staying active, doing something fun. And then I was also part of our women's service club on my campus, as well as singing in a youth choir. And then I was a sustainability intern at the Desert Research Institute. So as Saad talked about, like research wise, I'm not a huge research person. So I wouldn't say that you like absolutely have to do research, but I did something more like research oriented in like a sustainability fashion. So looking at the sustainable practices of an organization that's all about the environment. So stuff like that could be research oriented, but not necessarily like hands-on like lab research. And then I also was a Francesca stylist. You know, everybody has that high school job or you're just kind of working in retail or something like that. And then I also was an intern at Renown, and I kind of looked at all of the imaging departments there. And then I was a member of National Charity League, which is where I did a lot of my community service. And I did that since 6th grade, so it was a long time. And then I also did a build on trek to Nicaragua, where we fundraised money, and then we went there and built a school in a community that didn't prior have one. So that was a really awesome experience. And I would do it again in a heartbeat if I could, but we all know COVID kind of messed up some stuff with that. But currently, some of my things that I'm working on, I'm a peer health educator for the Student Health Center at UNR. So that's a fun way to kind of have a little bit more like hands-on experience with a student population versus some of the other medical populations you can encounter. So I really enjoyed that. And then I've also been a Science Fit PAC mentor. So Science Fit's the thing that you do coming into UNR as kind of like your lead into college the week before, like, here's college, you're here, yay, kind of thing. Let's get you rolling. So I'll be doing that for the 3rd time coming up in the fall. So I'm excited for that. And then I've also done Nevada Bound as a student representative for the College of Science. So basically just talking to prospective students, which will be you guys one day, and just kind of figuring out, are these kids interested in pursuing something in science, or are they looking at something else? And then I'm also president of the College of Science Student Advisory Board. So there's tons of clubs, like literally so many. So you can kind of find your niche and what you're interested in doing. But there's like over 400 at UNR alone. So there's always something for everyone. And then for the program, I also did an internship with Nevada Health Centers. So obviously I'm a science major, but I kind of like marketing, like social media kind of stuff. So I did that for them, but still was able to learn about federally qualified healthcare centers. So it's still an aspect of public health and medicine, but just from a different side of like, how do we reach all these populations that we have in Nevada? And then I am very involved in my sorority. And Kina will talk about this too, but there's so many opportunities in joining social organizations as well, where you can find that happy medium between like, this is my break from school, because we all need to find hobbies and things that we like to do, but also finding leadership opportunities. And I do a lot of my service through that as well. And then as for things that I'm interested in the future, as a 3rd year, I'm getting ready to take the MCAT this summer. But I am particularly interested in something related to infectious disease or kind of epidemiology, which is why I chose to minor in community health sciences. But I'm also considering doing an MD, MPH, and getting my master's of public health alongside my MD degree. But, you know, a lot can happen in the future, so we'll see. But that's just kind of my current interest.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. And then Hannah, you're from Reno, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so for like the Vegas kids here, the renowned student intern, that might not be so likely, but you can probably do something similar with St. Rose. And the cool thing about Vegas is I believe they have a DRI down in Vegas too. So if you see something that like one of the panelists has done that is interesting, it should still be feasible coming from Vegas. Saad and I are from Vegas, and then Hannah and Keaton are from Northern Nevada. All right, Keaton.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keetna. I am from rural Nevada. So I grew up in a really small town. My graduating class had 69 kids in it. So I am currently majoring in neuroscience with my focus track in rural and community health. My BSMD application coming out of school, I was in a lot of clubs. One of the benefits growing up in a small town was that you were able to do a lot. So I was in HOSA. I was the vice president of that. I was the president of NHS. I was in the tattoo club. I was the president or the captain for my sports teams. And then one of the things that I thought was really helpful for my application was that I did a CNA program that my school offered as a student. And that gave me a lot of clinical exposure. And not only that, but you can become certified afterwards and use that to work while you're in college if that's something you're interested in. So that was super helpful for me. And then I also shadowed in the emergency room. I actually didn't have any family who was in the medical field at all. And so I didn't really know who to reach out to. And so I literally walked into the emergency room and I thought to myself, well, the worst thing they can do is tell me no. And I asked the doctor there if he would let me shadow him, and he was nice and he said yes. And so I would just like to say, if you don't know any doctors, just ask. A lot of them want to help you, and they're more than happy to show you what they know. So currently I volunteer. Oh, I also did volunteering in high school too, but currently I volunteer with the food bank. And I also volunteer with the Northern Nevada Diabetes Association with type 1 diabetic children. I volunteer for nannying with COVID childcare. And then, like Hannah, I'm also involved in Greek life. I've held leadership positions through that, which has been really helpful for character development, I would say. And then currently, the last couple months, I've been shadowing a forensic psychiatrist at a maximum security psychiatric hospital. So it has been such an interesting time. So if anyone's interested in learning a bit about that, I'd be more than happy to share. And then some of my hobbies include hiking and yoga. I really enjoy practicing mindfulness and trying to de-stress, because I recently took my MCAT and that was really stressful. So lastly, I'll be continuing to medical school with Anish this fall. So I'm very excited, and I hope to either become a psychiatrist or a pediatrician, maybe a psychiatric pediatrician, who knows? But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the opportunities are endless. So, all right, great job, guys. And does anyone have any questions? You can unmute, you can turn on your camera, you can put it in the chat. Whatever you guys are comfortable with. Okay, we knew this might have happened, so we have some questions prepared. I'm gonna stop the screen share so we can see you guys a little bit better though. So the first question is, what opportunities and disadvantages do you feel you had because of the BSMD program that you may not have had if you took the general pre-med track? So I'm going to stop the screen share and put the question in the chat, and then we'll all just go ahead and discuss. But if the panelists want to get started, they can.
With BSMD was that I had all of my MCAT materials provided to me, and that was hugely helpful because it took away all of the stresses of having to figure out a study schedule and buy materials and figure out what books to buy, and having that and personal tutors provided to me as well because of me being in BSMD and all of my peers having it as well. That was so priceless, and I didn't even know that was available to us until I had reached that point in my undergrad career. So that was super cool, was just having that guidance all the way through my MCAT prep.
And to add to that, I would totally agree with Kina. As someone who's studying for the MCAT right now, it's really nice to have accountability. So I think that's something that I've definitely benefited from my entire time in the program, is like the accountability of the experience as well as the community. It's kind of something where, like, you know that you're having, like, there's other people who are either older or younger than you that are going through the same experience together. So you have this sense of community where it's like, hey, we're all in this together. We all have this same end goal, and we're not here to necessarily compete with each other. I know that's a very typical pre-med mindset and not one that I am personally a fan of, but I really like the sense of community in that I can rely on the people in my cohort and in other cohorts to either get advice, study with. I see them in my classes all the time. So I think that sense of community has been really important to me. And just staying on track, like knowing that, like, I'm where I need to be at, this is what I'm doing, and just having people there to support you along the way, saying like, hey, you're doing this, you're doing great, like, make sure you're getting this, and this done. Just like that kind of thing has been really nice for me.
Yeah, to go off of that, especially for me, because of COVID, my first year in UNR was basically all on Zoom. And meeting people on Zoom is really hard. So I was automatically given a set of really good friends, really good people I can connect with and learn together with them. You take the same classes together. And on Zoom like my freshman year, like I knew no one except my own cohort, my own BSMD cohort, and it was really easy to connect with them because we're already, we know we're going to be together for 8 years, so we just connected, and it was really nice to have already a set of people you can connect with right into college.
All right, and those were definitely a lot of the opportunities and advantages. So I guess I'll talk about the disadvantages. I mean, it's kind of hard because the BSMD program is pretty great, but one thing is like all the structure that they mentioned, they kind of give us like what to do every summer, and it's kind of planned out. I'd say there's maybe a little more flexibility if you go the traditional pre-med route, but if you like a little bit more structure, BSMD does give you that structure. So that's something to consider. There's no one right or wrong way to get to medical school. There's definitely pros and cons for having that structure versus not having it. But thank you guys. Another
I to actually add to that when you're saying, because of that structure, like an example of that is I know that like with the UNR one, you have I think it's only 5 or 6 majors, right? We can choose from.
Yeah, great point. Yeah.
Right. So like if you want to do a different major than the it's only I think 5. If you want to do a major that's not on that 5, like if you're part of the program, the BSc program, you have to do one of those 5 majors. So that's an example of like you have to fit into the structure and abide by it.
Right. And then I just went to my med school orientation, and there's people with humanities degrees starting medical school, and seems like they were able to major in business and like English, and they're still at the same place I'm at. Whereas if you're in BSMD, you do have to fit a little bit more of that traditional science structure. So just something to keep in mind. There's nothing is right or wrong, but it's just different. Question from the audience. What grade did you guys start preparing for the BSMD program?
So that is a very good question. I can talk on that really quick. So I would say, didn't really know that medicine was kind of my thing until probably early high school, like probably freshman year. I don't have anyone in my family that's in healthcare, so it was a little bit of a difference for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. My mom had kind of worked in like the business side of healthcare, so I had seen it from kind of a different perspective. So that was what got me that like initial interest in it. But I would say that once I started freshman year, my parents were kind of like, maybe let's start like exploring what you're kind of looking into. And I actually went to the BSMD information sessions for the program at UNR starting my sophomore year. So I went 3 times before I applied, and I was like, I better make sure this is right for me, just because it is a big decision. It's a really big decision, and that's one thing, I guess, going back to the last question is what could be a disadvantage is you're young, and it's hard to make a decision that's going to impact the rest of your life. So I did a lot once it was kind of in my head that I was like, let me really make sure this is something I want to do. So I tried to talk to people who are currently in the field, get exposure from all those different areas of like, these are people who are living this experience. What are their thoughts? And from that point on, though, I was like, maybe I should start focusing a little bit in more on like, what can I do that's like community service that I had already been doing, but maybe let me tailor it toward healthcare so I get more exposure and it would be more beneficial for my application in the long run if that's what I decided to do. So I think when the time came around and I was like, this is definitely something I want to do, I was already kind of in a better stance for myself. And it wasn't like panic, like I need to go find things to help build my application, because I had already been exposing myself and seeing like, this is a confirmation, this is definitely what I want to do.
Yeah, and then I kind of like briefly mentioned it in my slides, but I started volunteering as early as 9th grade. And then as for like the research and shadowing, that didn't really start until like my junior year. Kind of similar to Hannah, I guess I had like a general idea of where I was going, but then once I knew I wanted to do BSMD for sure, I really started to hone in on my application. Is there a high dropout rate? Oh, great question. Anyone want to take that one?
I would say no, there's not a high dropout rate, just because by the time that you make it into the program, you've made it past so many steps, and the process is so rigorous that if you're there, I really truly hope that you are there because you know you want to be there. And I remember when I was a freshman, my cohort, we had like 13 kids, and one kid after his first semester decided that he didn't want to be pre-med anymore and he dropped out. And I talked to him like a year ago and he was pre-med again because he changed his mind. And so it's like, you should really, really, really be sure that this is what you want. But you are in no means tied down to this program whatsoever. But no, I would say there's probably not a high dropout rate. I would say it's probably one student per cohort over the entire 4 years of undergrad.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then I don't know if your question was specifically referring to individuals choosing to drop out. There's also the unfortunate reality where there are requirements once you do get into BSMD. It's not a straight path to medical school. Once you are in undergrad, you have to maintain a 3.5. This is for UNR. The requirements vary by school to school, but generally a 3.5 overall in science GPA and about 30th%, like the top 30th percentile on the MCAT, which is like a 503 or higher. The scores and percentiles change, but those are requirements you have to maintain. I know this year alone, we had about 2 students who couldn't meet their MCAT score and they will not be matriculating and they'll have to take a gap year and apply again. So just because you're BSMD does not mean it's guaranteed. You still have to work really hard. As for the dropout rate, I don't think individuals necessarily want to drop out, but sometimes individuals just don't make it through the rigor of the program. So kind of answering both sides of your question there. All right. There's no, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Anish. I would just like to add really quick. So, and there's also the possibility, my cohort only had 8 coming in. And our freshman year, we had one student who decided to transfer. So sometimes the school just isn't right for you. So it's not necessarily like the rigor, but she was like, this major isn't what I'm looking for. I think I would do better personally somewhere else. But as Keena said, like the entire goal of the rigorous admissions process going into BSMD programs is really to say, like, are you sure that this is what you want to do? Because you're putting in so much effort, but they're also putting a lot kind of onto you to say, like, we're picking you as someone who's going to follow through. So another route to consider is sometimes it's too academically rigorous, or, like I saw this throughout COVID a lot, but people go to different schools elsewhere that aren't close to home or things like that. And people experience a lot of different things, maybe be a bit personal or anything like that, that could say like this university just isn't the right fit for me, which could also be a factor.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. So as you can see in every cohort, there's different reasons people lose interest. People want to go somewhere else. Some people just don't make it through the requirements, but not a crazy high dropout rate. If you know this is what you want and you work hard and you meet the requirements, then it is a surefire path to medical school. So question from the PowerPoint. Oh, no problem, Arnav. If you could change anything about your BSMD experience, what would it be?
I have a big one. I have a big one for general pre-med experience and BSMD experience. If I could change one thing, I wish that I would have came into college knowing what I liked as a hobby, what I enjoyed to do, because when times get stressful, and they are always going to get stressful, I literally had no outlet. And it took me until junior year to figure out that I enjoy things like hiking and yoga and going outside. Weird. But I didn't realize this because during my entire high school experience, I was doing sports and doing this club and doing XYZ. And a lot of it, you are trying to do as much as you can to be a good applicant, but also you want to make sure you're doing things for you. Like, do you play an instrument? keep that up. I really wish I would have stuck with instruments throughout college, because things like that help you relax are so important, because really times are going to get hard, but the people who make it through are the people who have great coping mechanisms. And so if there's anything I could change, is figure out what you love and what helps you relax, because that will change your undergrad experience.
Yeah, and I do like to hike sometimes, but even if it's just going over to my friend's house and playing video games for a night after a week of exams, it can be something as simple as that, just something to unwind so you're not always go, go, go. And you can also find like some healthy things that are good for your body, like working out, hiking, yoga. I think going to the gym is like probably like the greatest thing that the tuition covers at UNR. So definitely something to keep in mind. Would anyone else want to answer like what you would change about your experience?
I can go. Just to support that last one really quick, I definitely think it's super important. I got really into reading when I was in college. Like, I used to never read for pleasure because I was like, oh my gosh, I have to read for school. This is horrible. But like, it's something that I just found like, oh, I actually enjoy this. Like, it's like checks my mind out, but at the same time, like, you know, it's still good to do. So definitely finding a balance is good. But as we were talking about a little bit earlier, something that I would have changed, and you know, obviously COVID was a big part of my undergrad experience, so that is a little bit of an influence, but I wish there was less of a like stigma that there's no room to do what you enjoy. I feel like there's a big thing. Like, I remember when I was going to apply, I was like, oh my gosh, like I really want to study abroad, and like they're making it sound like I have no time to do anything. So I had worked it out where it would have worked with my schedule to study abroad over the summer, and it would have been perfect. You know, COVID got in the way just a little bit. That's okay. But there's like, I wish there just was a little bit less of a stigma around like how structured it is, because it's possible. And something that I kind of had to realize is like, this is still my undergrad experience, and like you only do college once. And I really tried to emphasize to myself, like, you need to make the most out of your experience because it's not all just school. So finding that balance of like getting the things that I wanted out of my experience while still meeting the expectations of the program is definitely something that I've tried to highlight for myself, just to know that like this is worthwhile to me and it's still going to be an enjoyable college experience.
Sorry, also just very quickly, one thing I wish I would have changed as well is I wish I would have started volunteering in college earlier, because I spent a lot of time like working and like doing fun things freshman and sophomore year, but I wasn't spending a lot of time doing things to fulfill my application requirements to matriculate to med school. And so things like community service, we have to have, I think, like 150 to 200 hours by the time we apply to med school. And if you wait the very last 6 months of your application to do all that, it is not fun. So just, I would say, find an organization that you want to volunteer with early, and stick with it, and literally do an hour a week and you'll be done by sophomore year.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So a question from the audience was, having only 5 or 6 majors to choose from, a disadvantage compared to a pre-med program?
I can
Yeah,
speak to this one.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I would say it wasn't necessarily disadvantaged because there's thought behind it. So the reason that you have these options are because the goal is that you're going to graduate on time. In some programs that's early. So sometimes it's 3 years, sometimes it's 2 years. But based on a 4-year like traditional undergraduate, the reason is because in order for you to be best prepared for medical school, as well as to take the MCAT, you need all of these basically prerequisites that fulfill all of the science, like the areas of science that you need covered before you get to med school, to make sure you're the most prepared. So that's why the program kind of limits us to this certain number of majors, because they know like this is the foundation that's going to get you to that point that's going to be most beneficial. And then, but that's just something to weigh. Like, it's just more like, oh, I'm a microbiology major, so all of these classes that I need are inherent in my major. So I have a little bit more room elective wise to do things that I like. Like, I'm doing my minor in community health sciences. So I really enjoy those classes and I have more flexibility there because I'm already covering my prerequisites earlier. But if you were to do, I have a friend who's a business major who's pre-med. So then you just have to consider like, you're going to have to do a little bit more work on your end to make sure you're meeting all of those prereqs versus them being inherent in your major. So just a consideration. It's more personal preference. I would really just try to pick something that you're interested in. And if you are limited to certain majors, then maybe look at minors to do something that's different, but you're still passionate about.
Yeah, and it's UNR that I know of that has like the 5 or 6 majors to choose from. I have some friends that got into BSMD programs at Case Western and Rochester. The one at Case Western majored in economics, and the one at Rochester also had like a humanities, like arts degree, and then got an MBA before starting medical school. So it's different in different programs across the country. For UNR though, I do feel like being locked into the 5 or 6 majors, I do understand where they're coming from. I do wish there was a little more flexibility to maybe study what you would like, but that's why they created something called focus tracks where you can kind of like specialize a little bit in nutrition, rural health, business. There's just like a lot of different opportunities to maybe learn something you're into that isn't part of the 5 to 6 majors that BSMD encompasses. So advantages and disadvantages, it's really just what's right for you. And that's something, if you do want to major in something that's non-science, that would be important to consider when choosing the schools you apply to for BSMD. So great question. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think if you're interested, I think I remember the 5. So I think it's, just so you know, the options, I think it's biology, biochem, I think chemistry, neuroscience, and microbiome and immunology. I think those are the options.
Also nutrition.
Nutrition too, right? Yeah.
Nutrition system. Yeah. I just feel like no one, do you guys know anyone who does nutrition? I don't know. I feel like no one.
Yeah, there's
Yeah?
Yeah, there's some nutrition majors.
Okay.
Amy's a nutrition major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in my cohort, in the cohort younger than me, none of us did nutrition.
Wait, Keitna, there's nutrition majors in our cohort, right? Like I'm thinking of one for sure. Okay, yeah. No, it's out of the 6, they don't care which one you pick as long as it's one of those. So yeah.
And I'll be honest, really quick. I would say like out of a lot of people, I tend to see a lot of people pick like bio as their major, just because it just kind of depends. Like bio, you have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to your upper division classes as to what you can take. But then I would say like as a microbiology major, I have a lot less of a choice when it comes to my upper divisions, just because it's a smaller major and there's less classes offered, but they're a little more tailored to what I'm already interested in. So definitely something, as Saad was saying, like look into it before you are like looking at programs and stuff like that. Look into what they're offering, because you can do your best to tailor it to your interests and still make sure you are doing what you want.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How does your cohort support one another?
I mean, as I talked about earlier, during the pandemic, it was great to have, not obviously we support each other academically, like all the time, texting, hey, how you doing for this test? Or, oh, I didn't really understand how the lac operon worked. Can you explain that to me? Obviously, there's that academic support, but then also there's kind of like a social support that for me was really helpful in the pandemic, because just Zoom, you don't meet anyone on Zoom. Everyone's got their cameras off. No one says anything. So it's just really great to have that immediate set of people you can connect with. And then there's probably other ways that these guys can talk about.
I feel like one of the things we had touched on was that being in BSMD is great because there's not that competitive edge anymore between you and your peers. And I remember one time I was crying after an MCAT prep because I thought that I could not do this. And my BSMD peer consoled me, and I don't think that I would have ever had that if it weren't for the program itself, because if I had been just another pre-med crying on a bench, that would be a good thing for other people who are trying to get into med school and they want to see me failing. And so it's really nice having that support because we really are all in the same boat, and it's good to know that people are there for you.
Yeah, like with my cohort, we share notes all the time. Like, oh shoot, I was feeling sick this day. Can you send me your notes from this day? All the time, all the time.
And I completely agree. Like, I have gotten really close to some people in my cohort, and like one of them was from my high school, and we weren't super close during high school, but like the program brought us together, and now we have a totally different relationship. So I think it's really just realizing like these are people here that are supporting you and they're not competing with you, and you're all in this together. And at least for us, like 8 years is a long time. So you really have this support system that can be there for you. So it's definitely what you make out of it. Like, you don't have to be best friends with everyone, like you can be acquaintances. That's totally fine. But it is an opportunity to have close friends that you're going through this shared experience with together. But I also think we rely on other cohorts too, not just your own. Like, I asked Keetna about classes. We share information. Like some of the people in Saad's cohort I know pretty well. And it's just finding that support system and community that's a little bit niche amongst a larger community that can be a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, funny that you mentioned that, because I know Hannah mentioned the Nevada Fit Science Fit program before starting college. I was actually the mentor for both Hannah's class and Saad's class. So that shows like that integration between cohorts. Even though we're separate classes, we still like to help each other out, share resources in a Google Drive just to help people get through classes and just have like the notes they need to succeed. So
yeah, I mentioned. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying I'm a genetics discussion leader here, so I talk to the younger cohort all the time about genetics, and they come to me when they need help in it.
Yeah, so definitely more of a team-like feel as opposed to the traditional pre-med route. The traditional pre-med route might be a little bit more individualistic, but even then, there's like fraternities you can join. You can meet other like-minded people and find like that small group that will support you, even when you're crying on a bench after a MCAT practice test. All right, so question from the audience. Sorry, Kate, I had to. Question from the audience: would not having any experience in medical volunteering or studies in 8th grade be detrimental in high school, or do I still have a chance? You absolutely still have a chance. I just want to make that clear. I'll let them elaborate though.
I literally had like 3 hours of community service in 9th grade. Like, you're fine. I think it's so awesome that you're considering your application so young as well. So don't worry, you still have time. Yeah, that's awesome. You're great.
Like, I think personally, I didn't really start building up my application until like probably like the end of 10th grade is actually when I started like formulating what I need to do and what I have done. Like the question of in 8th grade, nothing, no clue on building how to build applications. So that's really great that you already think about how to put together your application this early.
Also, I don't even think the application covers anything before 9th grade anyways, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, perfect. All right, thanks for that question. Are there any more from the audience before I move on to the PowerPoint? Oh, there are. Okay. I'm in the biomed program at my high school. Does that provide any advantage?
I think things like this, an advantage you can provide is when you're writing your essays for your application. There's like, and honestly, anything you do can be an advantage for you. You just have to word it right in your application. That's like it can almost be anything that you do and that you enjoy. You just have to utilize it in your application and talk about it passionately and in a great way, and it can be a great advantage.
I think that you being in your biomed program at your high school also highlights in your application that you know this is something you want to do and that you're interested in. young. And so I think that if you want to highlight it in that way, that would be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, now, question from Mr. Keeman. Let's do that one first. For the main application essay for BSMD programs, is it okay to write the essay creatively or abstractly, or should I write it straight up? And is writing it about a sick family member derivative as it would be if you were applying to college normally? Okay, good question.
Okay, I'm going to try to answer this to the best of my ability. It's been a little bit since I filled out our application, but if I recall correctly, when I had applied, there were four or five like short essay prompts that were specific to like the BSMD application, not necessarily like the general college application questions that you encounter. So I think something to consider there is they're going to be more like, why is this what you want to do? So just to like share a little bit of my own story, I had a personal medical history background that made me a bit more interested in pursuing medicine. And I shared part of that experience, as well as I had a grandmother that had passed away before I was ever born. But hearing these experiences through my family and realizing like the reason she didn't get care was because she was afraid was a really big factor for me. Like, I wanted to go into medicine because people shouldn't be afraid to receive care and they shouldn't have to suffer and pass away really young because of that. So I think it's more focused on like, how does that influence why you want to go into medicine, and phrasing it in that kind of way. But I think absolutely those are really valuable experiences to a lot of people and can influence hugely your passion and interest in pursuing medicine. So I think, as we've been saying, it's a little bit how you word it, but I think they're a bit different than your traditional college essay questions. And I'm trying to remember what else was on there, but there was one, everybody asks like, what kind of obstacles have you overcome? So you're going to encounter those same themes, but they're going to try to tie them a little bit more to like healthcare and medicine. And the biggest question you're going to get asked throughout the entire process is why you want to be a physician. Whether they ask that, like, why would you rather be a physician versus someone else in healthcare? Or just blatantly, why do you want to be a physician or anything like that? They'll kind of ask it in different ways, but that's something that you can start thinking about early, because they're not looking for like, I want to help people, because we all do. Like, that's not something that is unique to any of us. I think that's something that everybody in healthcare wants to do. So finding that story that's like, why am I here? And then why am I putting in all my time and effort to get me to this spot is something really good that you can start thinking about a little bit earlier, is like, what is driving you? What's your motivation in doing this? And I think there's definitely room for creativity in some of these essays. It just kind of depends on the prompt. Some of them are a little bit more straightforward, but if that's what's going to portray your story best, then I think that's totally awesome. And they're going to see that in your personality through your essays in that way.
Yeah, and if you're
Hannah, I just put down. Oh, sorry. I just put down the application questions that I had when I was applying. It was just those 4 supplemental questions. It was probably more or less the same for you too, in case the audience wants some idea as to like what these questions will look like. That might help put Hannah's answer into better context, as like some have more straightforward answers, some are more creative, and then you can also mention sick family members without making it derivative by like talking about it in a specific way. Like, this is not focusing so much on like the death maybe, but like what it did for you and like how it's going to shape the medicine that you practice. All right, go ahead, Saad.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, like, there's not, with our application, for me and for I think these guys too, there wasn't like a personal statement of the, and where I feel like with the personal statement, it's really nice to be creative and really show who you are. Whereas our application is really just like specific questions they're asking usually. So being creative is nice, but you have to make sure you answer the question that they asked, because they're asking specific questions. It's not like a general personal statement. Be like, tell us who you are. Go anywhere you want. Like, they have questions that you need to answer.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Keeman, or is there anything else we can talk about?
No, I was sort of kind of asking on behalf of all the students, just so like they can get like a a head start on how to prepare about how to write their disability essays.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks. Good answers.
Yeah. All right. So going back to the PowerPoint, let me just copy and paste that question again. So it's at the bottom of the chat. What research opportunities are available to BSMD and pre-med students?
So I'll talk about this. So because I'm pretty heavily involved in research. So we alluded earlier to there's these like focus tracks that when you first join the program in your first year, you learn about the focus tracks. I think I might miss some, but so there's research, as I'm I think there's nutrition, there's business, there's community health, there's I think education, there's you guys can recall any I'm missing already?
No, that sounds like all of them. We
I
didn't
think
even
that's all.
have business in our year. I think that's a new one for you
That
guys.
was the new one, yeah.
Yeah.
That one, and I think also they're working on adding a computer science
Okay.
version, something like that. That one's in the process being made though. But anyway, so these are like your focus tracks and the way to like expand your experience and learn more. So I chose research. So with the focus track, you have to do some sort of summer internship. So I worked in a research lab here on campus, and it was pretty easy. Like I had some other BSMD student just told me, hey, I work in this research lab, you can reach out to them if you want to. And then I'd reached out and I got in just like that. And I'm still working in that lab still for the past, it's getting close to working there a year now. And then otherwise, if you don't know where you can get a research opportunity with the faculty, you just send them an email, be like, hey, I'm interested in research, and they will take care of you. They will put you in directions to get you where you want to be. That's a big benefit of the BSMD is like we have that support. Like, you can ask our faculty, hey, I want to do this, and they will help you get there.
I feel like, yeah, because specifically BSMD is so prestigious in our school, a lot of faculty know about the program. And so when they hear you're a BSMD student, they know what it takes to get into this program. And so that automatically tells them a lot of the time that you are someone who's so qualified to be there. And I have seen that firsthand, that advantage. But also, if you're not interested in research at all, I have zero research experience in my undergrad career. It's not something that you absolutely have to do if it's not something that interests you. As long as you're still filling your time with valuable experiences, it's not something that's required at all.
And to go off of that as well, like same with Kina, I'm not a research person. I would prefer I guess the best way to say that is like, I'd prefer to do research that's not necessarily like in a lab. I have lab background from my classes. So I will tell you, like, I get emails from my microbiology professors, like during the semester that's like, hey, we have an opening in this lab, and they send it to people in your class. So that's something that's available to everyone. If you're in specific classes and you know your professors and things like that, they're there to help you. And a lot of them are doing research of their own. So that's something that's common to all pre-meds, and most universities we have like an undergraduate research department of our university that's solely dedicated to providing opportunities to undergrads. So that's something that's always there. But like through my internship that I did for my focus track, as I said earlier, I'd worked for Nevada Health Centers doing marketing and kind of social media stuff. But I did like research in the regard of like more public health related. So it was like gathering information about reasons that people don't necessarily access healthcare, from like if these people attended this free healthcare event, like what prevents them from seeing a primary care provider, different things like that that are a little bit different of a focus than like hands-on research. So I think that's something that you can kind of figure out once you get to college, is like if I want to do it at all. Am I looking for something more hands-on? Am I looking for something in the lab? Like, where do I want to be doing that kind of thing? But as Kina said, like, it's not something that's required and not something that it's like make or break for your application. I would really just say, like, find something that if you're interested in it, absolutely go for it, like sod. And there's someone in my cohort who is like all about research, and he has finished a bunch of his classes, but he's still going to matriculate with us. But his senior year, he's going to focus a lot more on research and take less classes. So stuff like that is something that you can kind of tailor to based on what your passions and interests are.
Yeah, and the medical school admissions committee, they're so good at sniffing out lies. So if there's something on your application that you're not passionate about and it's clear you just did it to put it on your application, they're going to see right through that. So don't do research because you feel like it's required. I don't have research. Keaton just mentioned she doesn't have research, and we're both starting medical school. So it's not paramount, but what we do have on our applications, we are passionate about, and that's something UNR Med was able to see. So that is so much more valuable. All right, great job, guys. Next question, are there any non-pre-med classes that you would recommend?
I want to talk about this for a second. So when you first come into university, there's a bunch of like general education requirements you have to take. But they're pretty like, there's like a lot of different classes you can take. So like there's like, I think some sort of music one. Most kids just take music appreciation, but I like piano. So I was able to take like just piano lessons with a really great professor here. Learned a lot from him. And it's even just doing the requirements, you're able to do non-pre-med classes that you that are required and still get some nice experience.
I totally agree with that. My freshman year as well, I came in and I was like, what do I want to do for my art credit? And I really enjoyed art in high school. I did photography and some different things like that. So there are so many options that fulfill some of your like core objectives that the university is looking for. So I took sculpture. I honestly had no idea what I was doing going into it, but I was like, I kind of want to do something with my hands and like hope that that's kind of like a stress reliever and something different. And I ended up doing like woodworking and welding. So it was really out of my comfort zone, but I loved it. Like it was honestly one of my favorite classes. If I could take it again, I would. But like just finding and like searching through your course catalog to find something fun is like something I would absolutely recommend. And then also like for my minor, which is community health sciences, it's a little bit different than like a science class itself, but I really enjoy those because there's tons of options. And there's like some on health policy. Some of them are like the history of vaccines. So it's still science related, but it's more of like a public health view of classes. So honestly, there's so many things you can do. And I would just literally look through the catalog and see, because you're going to have flexibility in your schedule if you're doing like a traditional 4-year undergrad where they want you to be taking electives in different categories. And there's so many options. So I think it's an awesome thing to try something new because now's the time to do it.
The other thing I would say is sign up for a class at the gym. The gym is so incredible. It's like worth millions of dollars, I think. Maybe I'm like making that up, but I personally do not stay active unless I'm held accountable. And so for the last year and a half, I've been continuously signing up for PEX classes, which is like what they're under at the course catalog. And there's so many things you can do to get out of your comfort zone. There's beginner yoga, there's advanced yoga, there's strength training classes, there's like CrossFit, there's swimming, like there's so many cool things. And if you sign up for a gym class, it's a really great way to hold yourself accountable and also relieve stress and stay healthy and active.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting college credit to lift weights. That sounds amazing. So as for me, my non-pre-med classes that I really enjoyed, back when I was choosing my focus track, business was not an option, but it's something that I've always had a passion for. And so I am doing my focus track in nutrition, but my minor in business administration. And it's just been so much fun. If anyone else is interested in business, I would recommend maybe getting a minor, at least like sampling a few of those courses, like marketing, accounting. It's just been a lot of fun. And I think it'll give me the foundations I need if I want to get an MBA down the line, or maybe even open up my own practice. So anything from like outside of medicine to something as like fun as yoga, there's just a lot of non-pre-med classes that you can take at UNR. There's a great diversity in the course catalog. So thank you everyone for that. The next question is, what general advice do you have for both BSMD and then traditional pre-med applicants?
I can speak to this one, and I think this is something that we've kind of covered throughout our questions here, but I would say my biggest piece of advice is just finding things that you're passionate about. I know this is maybe just like a personal pet peeve, but it makes me sad when I see people doing things just for their application. And it's I think there's so many opportunities where you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do research because it's going to look good on my application, but they're not looking for you to be this cookie cutter student. They want you to be you. And we like, the goal isn't for you to just be book smart. Like, we don't want physicians who can't speak to people and who aren't well rounded. You need to be someone that's personable and open to people, and like forming those communication abilities, connections, anything like that. So I would say my biggest recommendation is to do what you're interested in high school, like what brings you joy, what keeps you active, and things like that. And then you pull out the qualities that those activities provide to you and the skills that you build through that. And that's how you frame your application. Because in all honesty, it's all about what it means to you. So even if you like, I absolutely love volunteering at the SPCA, and I get to hang out with like the cats and the dogs. And so like, that's something that's totally separate from medicine, but like it means something to me, and it's something that brings me a lot of joy and like things like that. So it's all about what you're doing that's benefiting you and how you're going to share that experience with someone else. So finding the value in each activity that you do, I think, is really, really important.
I would also say, if you don't get into the BSMD program, don't let that be the end of your pre-med road. Because a lot of the times you'll go into freshman year and your class size is like 300, and your professor will say, look to your left, look to your right. Only one of you will go on to med school, and like things like this, but it's like actually true. And a lot of people let just not getting into the BSMD program deter them. And one of my close friends, she made it onto the wait list. She didn't get in, made it on the wait list, stuck through pre-med, and now we're going to be in the same medical school class, our first year of medical school, and we're living together in med school. So it's like, you can absolutely still be a very competitive, if not even better, applicant for medical school. Just please do not give up if you lose your footing along the way, because it is going to get hard, but use those opportunities to lean on your friends and reach out to your community, because if this is something you want to do, I really want you to pursue it. And we really do need more physicians in Nevada. And I think that a bunch of young students like you would be great at our schools. So thank you.
And then just for the application itself, and I guess it's just for general, not for anything. Especially when like in senior year, towards the end, you're going to get really, senioritis is going to hit, and you're not going to want to do work on anything. So make sure you start working on your application, like, the essay writing, getting your friends to proofread it as early as you can. Like, I know you and our BSMD, we release the questions. There's like a good amount of time between the time like they release the questions on the website and when the application is due. So like, I'd recommend, the week or two after they release the questions, at least let those start thinking about how you want to answer those questions, and then start writing it and getting as many people as you can to look over it, give their feedback, and really craft your words the way you want them to be. So just get on that early, because senioritis hits towards the end.
Yeah, thank you. That was just fantastic advice. And then the friend Keitna was referring to, I wanted her to come out and speak to you guys today so that she could show you that even if you don't get into BSMD, you work hard, you can get into medical school the traditional way. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, but I could tell you that her advice would probably be to not give up. So thank you so much, everyone. And then the final question from the PowerPoint is, what does a typical BSMD course load look like, and how does it compare or differ to a traditional pre-med course load?
I'm going to say it is almost essentially the exact same thing. The only difference, and this might be something very specific to UNR, I can't speak to any other programs, but the only difference that we have in course load are a class that you take freshman year that's kind of like normal, like any other freshman would take, kind of like an exploratory class that's like, maybe this is your major, this is kind of where it's leading you to. But as a member of a BSMD program, it's more like, you know what you're here for, but this is what our program is going to help you get to. And these are your options once you get into the field. So that was something that was different. And then our MCAT class that we do at UNR is something that's unique and very, very valuable as someone who's experiencing it now. But I have 3 roommates and all of us are like healthcare interested. And one of my roommates has the exact same major and minor as me, and she wants to be a PA. So there's so much that's essentially the same. You're just like, you were an undergrad, just like everyone else. There's just a few extra classes that might be required, but it really is your experience, and you can take the classes that satisfy your degree to a normal standard, just like anyone else.
Adding on to that, there is like one summer where you'll do a 150, I think, hour internship. And then that outreach is kind of provided by the BSMD program. And that's how I got connected with the Nevada Diabetes Association. And I still am in connection with them today because of it. So there is one summer where you'll be doing that, but it's pretty short. And then furthermore, I am a senior right now, as well as Anish, and we're in the BSMD senior capstone class. And that's specific to BSMD students as well. And it's a really fun class, and it prepares you for medical school. We've had so many interviews with medical students from UNR. They've shown us how to do things like physical exams. We've done research projects on infectious diseases. We've gotten to meet the UNR staff, and they've come and presented to us before. The BSMD senior thesis class has been so incredibly helpful for preparing me for medical school. And that was something that I didn't know was going to help me that much until I actually got here. So that's something to think about as well. That's offered with the UNR BSMD program.
Yeah, and then another thing that we do special, we've talked about a little bit about for those focus tracks. So Keaton mentioned you have to do 150-hour summer internship, and you also have to take 12 credits of classes in that focus track. But it's a small difference. It's just a little extra. And then if you go, I would imagine if you go to a BSMD that's like shorter, like a 6 or 7 year program, your undergrad you'll probably have to take more credits per semester though. So that would be something you should consider, because to be able to graduate in 3 years, it depends on program to program and person to person, but there's a likelihood that if you go to a shorter BSMD, if the undergraduate is 3 years or 2 years, then you're probably going to have to take a lot of core credits every semester.
Also remember though that your course load is, sorry Anish, just this last thing, your course load is going to differ significantly if you are taking any like dual credit college classes while you're in high school, or any AP classes. I know that we didn't really touch on that, but that's something that does make you a competitive applicant in high school, is taking AP and dual credit college courses, because it shows that you are ready and mature enough to take courses like that, of that difficulty, seriously. And so I personally came into college with an associate's degree from high school. And so I had a very chillax schedule that allowed me to take a lot more classes that I really enjoyed in my free time. So that's something to consider as well, is take AP, take college courses sooner rather than later, because it really helped me in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was amazing. All right. That is it for the questions from the PowerPoint. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? What would you say are the must-haves, if there is such a thing, on your high school resume in terms of extracurricular activities to give you a better shot at getting accepted to a BSMD or pre-med program? Do you have any specific activity ideas that can help one's application's chances besides your usual volunteering and shadowing?
My big thing is leadership. one of the biggest things that they look for in physicians is leadership qualities. And I think that if you're able to highlight that through your application, that is so important. And what's great about that is you can highlight that in so many different ways, whether it's through like you're the leader of your volunteer club, if you're the captain of your sports team, if you're the first musical chair of your band, like, and if you can highlight experiences in which you've had to showcase your leadership and use that, that is so, so important in your application. And so I really take note of that, and just keep that in mind throughout high school.
And just to add, I wouldn't say that you need to have like, everyone needs to have this one specific thing. As we've said continuously, like they're looking for who you are as a person, and you should hopefully be doing things that you enjoy. But also in the regards of shadowing, I like do not stress immensely about like having tons of shadowing, because it is so hard when you're under like 18. A lot of places will not very easily let you shadow. So even if you can't access opportunities like that, just speaking to people maybe in the field, if you have like a family friend, a friend of a friend, like just try to find connections where you're getting like stories and experiences from people. Just in really what they're looking for in that is like, have you looked into this as something you really want to do? It's not necessarily like you have to have this experience. It's more like, this is something that you're showing interest in, and we can see that you're dedicated and committed to this, because that's what they're looking for in any pre-med, is that this is something you really want to do with your life. But yeah, just as Keena said, I would also say leadership is a huge one, but you can find that in so many different opportunities. It's going to look so different for everyone. So just find it in things that you already normally do. Because those are things that you enjoy, and you're probably more likely to want to do something leadership wise in something that you already enjoy because you're passionate about it. So definitely stick to that and things that you already like and do.
Nice. And just to add on to that, like do you have any specific activity ideas that can help one's application's chances? One thing I didn't do in high school that I wish I did do, one of my friends had a passion project. And so he was just really into like playing chess, and he wanted to teach everyone around him how to play chess. So he started a nonprofit foundation that taught elementary school children from underprivileged areas how to play chess. And it wasn't even just to build his resume. He was just really into playing chess. So find something you're passionate about and then see if you can turn it into a bigger community scale project, and that'll make you stand out. It has nothing to do with medicine, but it shows that you care about your community and you want to make a positive impact. I'd say that's a must have, is that you can show in your application that you care about making a positive impact in the world.
Sorry, the last thing I want to add, this isn't necessarily a must have, but I think it is something to really think about, and that is important for any pre-med applicant, is the ability to be adaptable and change with what comes at you, because that is something that is so important for your undergraduate career and medical school. And I really think it's important to reflect on scenarios in your life where you have been faced with obstacles that you've had to adapt and change and overcome. And I think those are great like stories to highlight and draw from when thinking about what you want to include in your application.
Awesome. Thank you so much, panelists. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint right now. I know this might have been a lot of information thrown at you over the last hour and a half, but we do offer college counseling at Excel Academy. Services include college choice guidance, personal statement coaching, supplemental essay coaching, portfolio and resume help, and interview prep, including the MMI. 6 of our college counseling students were accepted into BSMD programs in 2021. If BSMD and pre-med seemed like something that's of interest to you, please feel free to contact Excel Academy's office at info@exlacademy.com to set up a meeting. They'd be happy to help. I hope that you guys aren't too overwhelmed with the information that we have given you over the hour and a half. We have spent our last 8 years kind of building our high school and undergraduate applications to get here, and we're conveying it all in an hour and a half. So that's why it might seem like a lot. But if you take it a day at a time, you guys can be in the exact same positions as us, if not better. I have no doubt about it. All right. And thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop the PowerPoint now, and we have a few minutes left together if there's any last minute pressing questions. Is there time to catch up in volunteering?
I am a procrastinator. What is it? What's that saying? Like, do as I say, not as I do. I am a horrible procrastinator, Ryan. I completely understand. I was in this same position, but for volunteering during undergrad, there is time. Just really commit. Like, I would really try to find a volunteer opportunity that chunks out like 4 to 5 hours at a time of volunteering, because that's like the fastest way you're going to build it up and knock it out. And that's what I kind of did. And also like stick with 1 to 2 organizations. It's better to do that rather than hop around and get like 4 hours here at this place and 4 hours here at that place. It's really important to highlight that you're committed to 1 or 2 places in general. Is that helpful?
I would say definitely capitalize on. You still got, if you're in 11th grade, that means you got this summer. This summer that's coming up. Make good use of it.
And also, if you haven't been volunteering, like if you've been working instead, like these last couple years, like that's what I talked about was I don't have volunteer hours. Like I was really busy working and doing these things like freshman and sophomore year. You can use that to your advantage and highlight that. So that's just a tip too for your application if they ask about it.
Yeah, you're going to be okay, Ryan. There's at least time to put in a solid application and give it your best shot. And if BSMD doesn't work out this time, like our panelists have said, you can just try again in college and then see if you can get into med school that way. And it's definitely possible. So no, it's not too late. And that yes, there is time to catch up in volunteering. What time is the general deadline for submitting your BSMD application?
December or January.
Yeah, it varies program to program, but you'll probably get the questions released in October, November, and you'll have until December through February to submit and do your interviews. And that's like the general timeline, but just keep track of which schools you want to apply to, and then each one will have a different timeline, and just keep like a spreadsheet of all the different due dates, and they're more or less around that December to February window that Keaton had just mentioned.
I think I feel like I remember submitting mine like end of January, beginning February.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, I think is UNR's.
Like the winter time when it's cold outside. Thank you so much for joining us on your Saturday.
Thank you. Have a good one.